think, Scully?
I want to remember how it was.
You are feeling very sleepy.
I can remember it all so clearly, as if it just happened.
Just close your eyes and take long, deep breaths,
How do we learn about the present?
relaxing all parts of your body.
We look to the past.
Long, deep breaths.
When I look back, I mean, there are so many memories from the show and so many important ones to me.
Is this actual footage of the alien autopsy or simply a well-made hoax?
When the X-Files began, the landscape was much different than it is now. There was no reality TV. There were actually few dramas on television. I sort of resisted the label of science fiction early on. I always thought of the show as more speculative science.
Friday at 9, 8 Central.
The X-Files are a fictional group of file cases in the FBI, unsolved cases having to do with unexplained phenomena.
There's just so many ways that we can go with this. There's so many stories, there's so many ideas and fantasies and twists on reality.
You find out what they put in your neck.
They take our memories away, but somehow they start to seep back.
There are types of amnesia.
This is not amnesia. I think it's something far more deliberate and insidious.
I was afraid.
I was 12 when it happened.
Then there are the screen memories they implant.
Implanted over actual memories to make abductees forget.
Isn't that what happens? Time stops?
After 25 years now, I had a smile on my face. How many incredible images have been produced? Doing it in a filmic way, doing it completely over our heads. We didn't know what we couldn't do, so we tried to do everything. You know, I have images that always entertain me. Mulder and Michael McKean doing that scene in the doorway, the mother from Home in that scene where she's pulled from under the bed. This is the thing about the X-Files. There's so many incredible moments in the show. They are too numerous to start listing.
They found Karen Swenson's body in the forest, in her pajamas, 10 miles from her house. How did she get there? What were those kids doing out there in the forest?
The X-Files pilot went to Vancouver because Vancouver has the most beautiful forests in the world. We've gone back there again and again and again because it is dark and forbidding and has a natural atmosphere.
It put something in my head.
When I see the pilot, I'm just reminded about all the hard work that went into it, all the care, all the mistakes, nights in the forest with David and Jillian. We really didn't know each other then. The pouring rain, the freezing cold, the scene in the graveyard where Scully's supposed to howl at the moon. When I look at that pilot, I'm reminded about when you believe in something and you have passion for something, it pays off.
This must be the place.
When it was picked up, I was on unemployment, had no possessions, I had no car, living in somebody else's apartment. You know, all of a sudden having a home in another country and having a paycheck, let alone a consistent paycheck, everything changed. My experience was so limited that the concept of shooting the scenes out of sequence, not chronologically, all of a sudden was like, wait a second, how do you do that? And I devised a way to write up charts. And I would do this chart of, in every scene, what information I knew before that, what I didn't know yet.
Am I to understand that you want me to debunk the X-Files project, sir?
I mean, at the beginning, I just needed that security. I couldn't fathom moving forward without knowing every little detail, you know. And after a while, you get to just be able to flip a few pages back and go, oh, okay, this is what we've done. Oh, we haven't shot that yet. I don't know this, you know. And you start to trust your body's ability to remember that information. I mean, I was a baby. I knew absolutely nothing about lighting and marks and monitoring oneself. Guard! If I watch the early episodes, I see over time somebody who's starting to put the pieces together and figure out, oh, okay, It's better if I turn towards the light in a scene. So all of that was learning in the doing.
Be careful with that. It's the only bulb that works.
David's kind of tall, and Gillian Anderson is not.
You're damn right.
When you're doing a two-shot, it's hard to frame them. You know, she's way down here, and he's way up here, and it looks odd. Or if you're doing an over, sometimes it's hard to frame properly. They would often walk together for a period, or she'd have to walk in and be the right height.
See, look, this is a jilly board.
The whole city.
The city of Vancouver built a jilly board just for me. For our scenes together, we can do walk and talks.
Perfect. Look.
Right? Thank you, Vancouver.
This is a 2-foot jilly board. As you can see, it's pretty simple. It's a hunk of wood. This is not exactly what we built. Al Campbell, who was the key grip on main unit, asked Kim Olsen, who was the best boy at the time, to make like a pathway to raise her up. And it became something we carried. Main unit, second unit had 2 or 3 of them.
Left other clues.
The first one Kim made weighed about 30 tons. It was all wood. We ended up making one that was filled with foam, so it wouldn't make a noise when she walked on it.
Let's do a rehearsal, quick run through. And action.
You can set down the jilly board to equalize their heights so it doesn't look funny to camera when they approach in a 2-shot.
Door swings open.
You go first.
Fast forward, I want to say almost 20 years, and I'm on set in Los Angeles and somebody asked for a jilly board. And so I guess it's kind of moved across North America.
13 Charlie, take 1, and only mark.
Rolling.
And action.
So why didn't they ask me?
They feel your methods, your theories are...
Spooky? Do you think I'm spooky?
One thing I remember was sitting in a Fox office, and there was a really old air conditioning unit that had all these vents and stuff.
That vent is 6 inches by about 18. Even if a reticulin could crawl through, it's screwed in place.
And I remember the moment when we said, hey, what if a guy can squeeze through that vent and, like, eat your liver? And to me, you know, I know it sounds crazy that's the thing I remember most, but the fact is that we had the ability to put that in a show. You know, just sitting around, looking at your environment, think of something crazy, and then do it. So to me, the thing that epitomizes X-Files is that any strange idea you have can fit.
You could possibly make 12 different shows out of this show. It's a very flexible frame in terms of tonality, in terms of action, in terms of mythology, in terms of subject matter. It can go a lot of different ways. And the fans, I think, like all those ways that it goes.
When somebody says the word X-Files, what's the very first thing that comes to your mind? Monsters.
Theme song.
Joy to my life.
Aliens.
The Mulder-Scully relationship.
The fluke man eating my neck.
That's always, I think, what's been great about this show is that when you sat down, you really never knew what you were going to watch. You could have 2 or 3 heavy-duty shows in a row and then have an episode that Darren or Vince did that was lighter.
Do you have any insight into how 5 women came to be inseminated with your sperm?
You make it sound so romantic.
Or Vince would do a very intense, like pusher type thing.
Mulder.
The Russian roulette scene with Mulder in the hospital. Well, first of all, I felt in a very vulnerable position because I'm wearing a hospital gown. And right off the bat, I don't know if you've ever worn a hospital gown, most people have. They don't make you feel very secure.
Your turn, Scully. Gotta play by the rules. Pull the trigger, Mulder.
Mulder, fight him. You can fight this.
Come on.
I'm gonna kill you, Modell.
Yeah, pull the trigger, you get another crack at me.
That sense that I was using everything I had to control his mind, it was so intense. I was personally exhausted at the end of that day. I was kind of relieved to get shot, to be honest with you. X-Files had an anthology feel, like Black Mirror now and Twilight Zone in its time, in that they were separate stories, but you see the same characters all the time, and they had a relationship that went week to week. That stayed the same.
There's many things you could say are responsible for the success of the X-Files, but the thing that made it great was the thing you couldn't have planned on, you couldn't have known, was that you were casting these 2 actors who had this incredible chemistry. And David and Gillian had that, still have that.
There's something there, and I would hazard to say that it was there from the beginning, and perhaps that was why the people at Fox, or specifically actually Chris and Randy Stone, our old casting director, had fought so strongly for us to be the two. Because it exists just when we're in the room together.
These are Agents Mulder and Scully from the FBI.
The Federal Bureau of Investigations?
We were wondering how the suspect in your mother's case looks exactly like this.
The Great Mutado. I really like that moment in Chris's episode, The Postmodern Prometheus, where at the end I asked Scully to dance, and we dance a little bit, and then we turn into this kind of comic book. It was like us passing into mythology in a way. You know, it was like the real characters passing into the past, passing into fiction. That to me was always a poignant moment.
This was all impromptu. This was all improvised. The smiles on their face are true and honest and reflective of not just a television partnership, but a kind of strange and wonderful romance.
I think they're romantic characters anyway, because they're characters dedicated to the truth, and they're selfless, and they sacrifice for a higher ideal. That makes them very romantic. But as a couple, even before they became romantically involved, these were two super smart, attractive people who respected each other. I think that moved people, especially women, not surprisingly, to find a man who respects you that much.
It's funny, I just realized something. How much you're like Ahab. It's just the truth or a white whale. What difference does it make? I mean, both obsessions are impossible to capture, and trying to do so will only leave you dead along with everyone else you bring with you. You know, Mulder, you are Ahab.
You know, it's interesting you should say that, because I've always wanted a peg leg.
Any classic duo are kind of opposites, and yet there's similarities. You have Mulder going crazy, and Scully says, okay, that's crazy, and yet she loves seeing Mulder be crazy. On the one hand, it's believer, skeptic. That's like almost sitcom kind of, oh, Oscar's the sloppy one and Felix is neat. But then you combined it with the fact that they obviously enjoy each other's company, that they disagree with a person, but also are fond of their idiosyncrasies.
David and Jillian are so different as people, and now they've become quite close and really cherish each other.
My turn is actually more on that line and less on the actual mark.
Yeah. Let's take it from here.
But it wasn't always that way. There were many times they were at odds, and there were times when they were shooting and, you know, they weren't speaking to each other, but then the camera would roll, and it was like these two people. The way they looked into each other's eyes was so powerful.
There were certainly days, weeks, months, years when, you know, the relationship was slightly contentious, and yet the chemistry was still. I remember my manager calling me up once and saying, man, you were angry in that episode. And so he may have been in the firing line sometimes.
Why don't I have a desk?
What do you mean? I always assumed that that was your area.
Back there.
Regardless, I think we pretty much always managed to provide what's necessary so that even if we were not particularly getting along off camera, that would still exist on screen. I mean, David and I, we were in every single scene. It was just the two of us. And it was just so unbelievably intense.
We are heading toward 161 hours of The X-Files. Unless you work in television on a dramatic two-lead show like this, you probably won't do this much work in your career as an actor. I think what people don't imagine is how much blood, sweat, and tears go into each episode and each year of the show. And the truth is, it's a very unglamorous job.
Pump it up now. And action!
I eat at my desk, always lunch and usually dinner. We are here long, long hours, and you can never let up because it's a deadline business. We've got to make those air dates.
This is the 209th production meeting of The X-Files. I think that says it all.
The high point for me working on the series has always been the esprit de corps, working with a group of people who are doing their best work and all together raise the level of everybody's ability. And so as a result of that coming together, I think raised the level of quality on television.
Chris Carter's the hardest working guy that I've ever seen in this business. I have a deep respect for the men and women that work for him, because the people behind the scenes don't go to sleep until they got a good show on film. And you can have a show about aliens and abductions and government cover-ups, but if it's not done properly, nobody's going to watch it.
The original run of the series was unlike anything else on TV at the time. I mean, it pushed the limits of what you could do with television. You know, a lot of shows owe a debt to X-Files in that they're able to push the boundaries the way television does now.
3, 2, 1, cue.
Every time you crack a script open, you really have to kind of reboot your mind and just say, okay, what we did last week is not what we're doing this week. And that's challenging as a cinematographer, but it creates huge opportunities to do really interesting visual things.
We were asked to make it dark and edgy, and John Bartley really took that and he ran with it.
Mulder.
Nobody did the depth of shadows, the contrast of shadow and light, or nobody did entire scenes where you were like in the belly of a black submarine or a boat or something, and we were lighting with, flashlights. That wasn't done in television.
Agent Scully had been abducted in the beginning of season 2 because Gillian Anderson was pregnant in real life and they needed to account for her absence. That inevitably led to the need for a continuing storyline for what became the mythology. You know, at the time we didn't call it mythology. We didn't know we had a mythology. I don't think I even heard that phrase till the 4th or 5th season to describe the continuing storyline in the X-Files.
Oh my God, Scully. What have they done?
Burn it! And I just, by default, became sort of the keeper of that narrative. I was incredibly green. I was just out of film school. I knew nothing. And I remember the second day I was there going out to lunch with Chris and Howard Gordon and pitching the idea for an episode where Mulder's sister comes back.
Who was Mom talking?
And after all these years, how would he know if that was her or not? This was before DNA testing, remember? And I could see it in Chris's eyes. This was a good idea.
Fox.
And so Chris decided that this should be the next chapter in that. And me being so naive, Chris had had an article from the New York Times posted on his bulletin board in his office that showed a submarine conning tower breaking through the ice in the Arctic Circle. And I thought, wouldn't that be cool to put that in my episode? And no sooner had I done that than people on the Fox lot were calling for me to be fired because I was obviously an idiot, thinking that in a television schedule and budget, you could have a submarine conning tower breaking through the ice. What Chris did brilliantly was propose, let's make that into a 2-part episode so that the cost of that is amortized over 2 episodes, and argued that it was worth the extra expense for the studio because it would be broadcast in February during the sweeps period when they set their advertising rates. It became a pattern then that continued the rest of the series, where we would have mythology episodes. If you notice, they're always in November and February, which are the ratings sweeps periods. And they would always be 2-part episodes to justify their added expense.
Why do I have to smoke? There are 2 possibilities. One is, if you had seen what I have seen, you would smoke too. The other is that I'm really an alien and I need the carbon monoxide. In One Breath, written by Morgan and Wong, suddenly there's a big scene for the smoking man who had been just a presence in the background.
Sit down!
How'd you find me?
Shut up! Tonight I ask the questions. You're gonna answer me, you son of a bitch!
Don't try and threaten me, Mulder. I've watched presidents die. And there was much fear, apparently, in the back offices, but do you think Bill Davis can act? I mean, all of a sudden there was this big scene for him to do, and they didn't know what I would make of it. And my good friend, Bob Goodwin, Bob was especially concerned because he was the director.
If people were to know of the things that I know, it would all fall apart.
Of course, I said to him subsequently, maybe you could have just looked at my resume or my demo reel. But anyway, he said, within moments of starting to work, he was just delighted. That was kind of the turning point for me, I think, and my character, because now they had faith in what could happen in the story and what I could do with it.
Even though people are clamoring for answers, I think that they would be disappointed because these are the kind of issues that are interesting in that they're not resolved. Once you say, yes, there are aliens, yes, this man who smokes a lot of cigarettes is the devil incarnate, it becomes ridiculous. So it's much better for a television show to raise questions and to raise theories.
It's the tip of the iceberg. You and Mulder are the only ones who can bring it to light.
I don't trust you.
You've got no one else to trust.
This is an interesting thing that happens as a show like The X-Files goes on, is it becomes more Baroque. You know, you start out with one informant, which is Deep Throat, and then you get X, and then you get Marita Covarrubias, and then you get the well-manicured man, and it starts to have all these branches, and it becomes very challenging to keep pruning those branches back so that your narrative is intelligible.
They're here, aren't they?
Mr. Mulder, they've been here for a long, long time.
Well, my position as an informant always was supposed to be a secret. And the relationship to Mulder was something we never discussed on film, but we discussed a lot in the dressing room. We often speculated that I might actually be Mulder's father and he didn't know it. But as you know, it didn't work out that way.
You know, Chris definitely wanted to make a statement by killing a well-liked character. He just wanted to say, okay, this is the kind of show we are. You know, we'll shoot JR in the first season or whatever.
Trust.
I thought it was a very ballsy kind of maneuver, and I didn't really think of the repercussions, which was we couldn't have Jerry around anymore.
Trust.
I miss him.
No one.
I want an answer.
You still don't get it, do you? The truth is still out there, but it's never been more dangerous.
I knew as much about X as most of the audience knew about X. That is to say, he remained a mystery to me also. So when actors say they want to know a lot about a character, sometimes it works not to know because it plays as real. But my dying scene, I will always remember that because Chris Carter called me up and said, I got good news and bad news. He said, good news is we want you back up for another episode. Bad news is you got to take a bullet. But the thing I remember most was that they wanted a stunt man to take the fall. And I think they brought one in. I watched them do it. I said, no, I want to do this. Because I've actually seen human beings shot and killed. Most people who are shot and killed in movies and television, it's theatrical. They're blown back, they topple over, they stumble. That's not the way it happens. You get hit by a bullet that takes you out and you drop. You drop like a sack of potatoes, as they say. It's like the lights go out immediately. And I wanted to do that myself. And I think for those of you who remember that scene, it was about as realistic as I could get it. Bam, bam, and you drop.
How does he even know about a secret rendezvous signal?
He clearly wants you involved, Scully. Come on, it'll be like a date.
Mulder and Scully, I don't know how good they might be at their job if they're having these secret meetings in parking decks because they're so echoey.
There is no Dr. They!
You can either whisper where you can't hear each other, or if you get mad, it echoes and then you're busted. So next time, go to the county fair. Nobody will notice you.
David and Jillian?
It's a Mandela effect.
The what effect?
A Mandela effect, when someone has a memory that doesn't coincide with everybody else's or the facts.
And cut.
The memory I have from originally working on the show that's always stayed with me was the script was due for Jose Chung's From Outer Space. It was due the next day, and I still had a lot to write. I spent the whole night writing the last act, which is like 12 to 14 pages.
Wait a minute. It can't all be fake memory implantation. What about that third alien? What was that thing?
Who, Lord Kimbo?
It starts from Mulder talking to the guy in the diner.
You ever had the suspicion that you've been abducted by aliens?
And then him eating pie.
You ever experienced a period of missing time? Have you ever found a metal implant in your body?
The men in black talking to Mulder while Scully's getting ice.
You're feeling very sleepy. Alex Trebek, the game show host?
And the end of the Jose Chung interview with Scully, and then Mulder confronting Jose Chung, and then the wrap of all this character. That was all one sitting. At the time, it felt like a Herculean effort. Up to that point, I'd never written that much. And I finished at like 4 or 5 in the morning. And I was exhausted, but so happy because the episode came out exactly the way I wanted it to. And then when we shot it, it came out even better. And those moments are very rare, working on things. I went to the commissary and got pancakes, French toast.
was just so happy I was done. And I really thought, okay, this is my last X-File. I don't ever have to do this again. And now here we are 20 years later, still writing the show.
Where the hell are they taking Reggie?
Peter's an idiot now. Is that okay? Is that even bigger?
What's the greatest thing about being associated with the X-Files?
I met her.
Ooh, what a thing to say.
Huh?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Do you do anything on the show?
I'm Jillian Stubble.
I have many memories, and I think probably the most important one that I can relate to you is one time Jillian and David and I were shooting out at the mines out of Britannia, and we were doing a scene in a restaurant out there. One of the girls that was on the set, she was a waitress. It was like that Thunderbolt thing from The Godfather. I mean, I saw her and it was like, whoa. And I said to David, I said, who is that? And he goes, that's Arlene. And I looked at him and I go, I'm gonna marry her. And I married her 8 months later. This was like the third season. I'd never seen her before because she was always on second unit doing Jillian. You know, the back of Jillian, or Jillian in a car, or Jillian running, or Jillian in the distance. She really did a good job with it. She's my wife and I'm bragging on her, but that's the way it is.
Excuse me, Agent Scully?
When the show moved down to Los Angeles, she ended up playing my secretary, and we had some scenes together, and it was always a lot of fun.
Agent Mulder?
Hey, do you have the key to this drawer?
What are you doing?
The desk that I had when we were shooting the original series up here, when we moved to Los Angeles, they transferred all the furniture from my office down to Los Angeles so they could recreate the office down there. First day back, we were getting ready to shoot the scene, and I'm kind of just getting used to being, back in my office again. I opened up the top drawer on my desk, and a letter had been taped to the drawer from some of the crew members that I had worked with up here. It was a very sweet letter, and it touched me tremendously. Because we lost a family when we left the crew up here, and gained a new family when we went down to Los Angeles, and they became as important to us as a family up here. So there's many moments over a long run of this wonderful show, and I couldn't be more thankful for all of them.
There was one moment in particular that when it happened, I thought, this is going to be the best moment I have on The X-Files, no matter how long this series goes on. It was the opening night of Fight the Future, the first X-Files feature film. Chris and I were driving around from movie theater to movie theater, watching how the movie was playing. And we went to Grauman's Chinese Theater in Hollywood, which is a massive theater. And in the back of that theater, there's this tiny little room that you would never know exists that allows you to watch the movie and watch the audience. And so we climbed up the narrow stairs to this little room, and we happened to get there just at the moment when Mulder and Scully were in the hallway, and they're just about to kiss. And at the moment they're about to kiss, there's a bee on Scully's collar that stings her neck and interrupts the kiss. And at that moment, all 3,000 people that were in that movie theater just screamed all at once, which I thought, was incredible. It showed you how invested they were in these characters. And I thought, isn't that amazing? You get that reaction for two people not kissing. It was this restraint, it was this longing, it was wanting something you couldn't have that was so powerful. That was the first time I got to see The X-Files with an audience. It's a rare thing, because usually when you're doing television, you just imagine how the audience is receiving it. And I thought, it will never get better than this.
The X-Files new season begins Sunday, November 8th on Fox.
Back in Los Angeles, the first episode in the desert, we got a panic call from the director the first day, Kim Manners, saying, I'm shooting in bright sunshine. It's really weird. We linger on the sun for just a little bit too long as a kind of wink at the fact that we are in a different place. In Vancouver, we'd been there for 5 years, and we'd kind of used up all our resources. We'd been to almost every landscape that they had for us, every building, every monument, every nook and cranny. So when we got to Los Angeles, we had a whole new world open up to us, really.
Hey, Scully, you're not going to believe this. Get up here. The sky just cleared, and there it was.
You've got a period ship with an amazing history. The Queen Mary really helped win the war, carried troops around the world.
So everyone has a reaction to the Nazi coming into the ballroom. Okay, everybody get that?
Maybe it's because he's not in the uniform right now, but
Right, but everyone needs to react to this. Okay.
All right, folks, listen up, please.
I try to direct one episode a year. It's my treat to myself. It's a good thing for me too because we are visual storytellers, and oftentimes as writers you get stuck in an office writing script and you get a little bit disconnected from the real process, which is putting dramatic scenes on film.
I suggest you get your Nazi paws off me before you get one of them and kiss her.
No, it's me, Mulder.
Oh, you speak English, do you? Well, how'd you like to see the stars in the American flag?
I'm not a Nazi.
Oh, sure. You just look like one, right?
I had to steal this uniform, Scully.
I really try to come up with a script that I wouldn't want to have to ask someone else to translate, something that is kind of personal and kind of quirky.
He said put your hands up.
The episode has a approach where there are no cuts. It is one long continuous picture.
It's challenging to get used to the new rhythm. One would hope that you have enough energy to act all the time, but you know, your body just kind of knows when the cuts are going to take place and when they're going to be on somebody else. And to get used to the fact that during these shots, you're always on at all times. You really get to see how good of an actor or not you are when you're watching the playbacks.
You know, so if you flub, you can't just do a pickup, which you normally can do. The lines are in German, and we had a dialogue coach put them on tape for me, and I just had to learn how to say them. So it seems almost perverse. Here we're doing it in a foreign language, and we got to get everything right on a great long take.
Der weiß, wie man eine Bombe macht, die den Krieg gewinnen wird.
What I'm most looking forward to is a couple of sequences that take place later on this week where Scully is moving from one office to the next office to the next office to talk to people and try and get them to help her to find Mulder.
Sorry.
One of the hardest challenges in a TV show is when it gets into its 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th year. That longevity, you've beat all the odds. Are you just going to rest on your laurels? Are you just going to sort of go along and wait till the show, you know, sort of dies a natural death? Or are you going to try to make it new, reinvent it? For me, that's the test of longevity.
Is it you?
I've been trying to reach you. I got the information you needed.
As the show went on and on, you started to realize as you were coming up with story ideas, oh crap, that's too much like Tombs. That's too much like Littered Bets. You would realize that X-Files does have a template, and you didn't want to do that. You didn't want to repeat.
And the nature of these crimes, they're notoriously hard to quantify on any kind of rigorous scientific level, as Agent Scully will tell you.
Oh, yeah.
And X-Cops, like Triangle,
I was afraid of Scully.
Was one that broke the mold. It's not going to be quite like anything we've ever done before.
So we're back at the home of Steve and Edie. Thought we'd check on them. They seem to fit our victim profile.
I'm sorry, are you talking to me?
Vince Gilligan, who's the co-executive producer on the show and so important to the X-Files, he loves the show Cops, and he'd always wanted to do an X-File that was a Cops-style episode. It just so happens that we got some technical support from the guys from Cops, and we're doing it exactly like one of those episodes, which seems easy in a way because it's really just cameramen running and gunning with video cameras, but when you have a script and you have to choreograph things and the actors have to know their lines, it's a degree of difficulty greater than usual because everyone has to pretend to make it natural, but the truth is it is very much staged and a planned choreographed event.
I remember the other shows on the Fox lot, I think they looked down at us. They thought we were this kind of dumb show about monsters and aliens.
Hey, it all depends on how they edit it together.
And for us, it was like, no, we're going to make this really smart. This is going to be about something. And we're going to really reach and try and make this a show that isn't something you just watch once and forget about.
I think that Glenn has told a lot of X-Files stories, not unlike all that core group of guys. Some of the fun of it, you know, back then and now is to turn it inside out.
What did Chris call it? Nightmare on Scully Street.
Yeah.
It was pretty audacious, I thought, for an hour of network television that you're going to sell ad space for it to be so different, you know, and so dialogueless. If you tune in the middle of that show, you're lost. That's pretty ballsy. It came at the right time, like in the middle of the year when I think we were getting a little tired, and it was nice to not have to go home and memorize dialogue at the end of a long day. So personally, I enjoyed the vacation from having to be too verbal.
The scenes like in the Japanese restaurant, you know, so much fun. I mean, just so much fun to be a part of something that is so stylized, and you understand what piece you fit into the whole in terms of telling a stylized X-File.
I just wanted to do Duel, the Spielberg movie, with drones. So after that, you just like turn and whack it, and boom, it's gonna crash, whatever happens, and then set. Duel, like as a kid, I was like, wow, there was no talking. Then I noticed it a lot in the second half of The Birds. Doesn't have a lot of dialogue. Just something I really liked, and then you become older and rediscover silent films. Marilyn Osborne, who was on the show, and we went to a UFO convention in '93 when we were starting the show to see what's going on. They sold T-shirts and all kinds of stuff. And it was this little alien head. It was cool and funny and just seemed to be something that I would put on my desk to be a reminder of what we're doing. And for every script I've written, X-Files and beyond, and shows that made it and didn't, that little alien head was there, and I'm like, he should be in a show. And so I put him in the bag and I brought him up here, and he's not in any other Mulder house scenes because I took him home because I knew like he would disappear.
Mulder, am I dead?
Mulder, it's like I designed heaven.
And the Ramones are here, and they don't fight.
And every night they get on stage and they play California Sun, and I circle the mosh pit like they do on the West Coast.
This is actually a replica of the Ramones Mondo Bizarro t-shirt. I have the original one back in my home, but they made this one just for this episode.
I had breakfast with the guy who shot John F. Kennedy.
Is that so?
Legal had to get the clearance for Langley to wear a Ramones t-shirt. So they called the Ramones, and the Ramones thoughtfully said, well, hang on, we got to watch one of these episodes before we say yes.
Don't let their looks fool you.
And they fell in love with the X-Files, so much so that when they would play at CBGB's,
they would go on first on a Friday night so that they could get home to watch the X-Files. So even though they would maybe a headliner, like other bands would play after them, just they would like blow through a set and then get home to the television.
So who's Joey?
Joey Ramone, leader of the greatest punk rock band in human history? No, shut up. And then years later, Joey got lymphoma cancer, and when he died, they had a posthumous birthday party as a cancer benefit, and they flew me out to New York to the Bowery Ballroom to introduce some of the bands. They said as Joey was very sick and dying, all he wanted to do was watch Lone Gunman episodes of the X-Files and the Lone Gunman spinoff. Wow. And so, yeah, and they said to me, listen, we kept his apartment exactly as is, so if you're ever in New York, you can stay at his place for free. And of course, yeah, that look came to my face. You want to know why Joey Ramone's my hero? Because people like you never managed to grind him down. And he's not dead.
Sincerest apologies.
Guys like that, they live forever. Look at...
But
No hands.
roll, please.
Parker?
I think Monica Reyes is thrilled and fascinated to join the X-Files, much like Annabeth Gish is. Especially doing this scene just now with the Lone Gunman, it's surreal. It is bizarre. When I went to college, we would all gather in someone's dorm room to watch the Sunday night X-Files.
Good job.
It's an amazing experience to join something that's already in motion and has been for a long time. You're kind of putting a new cog in the wheel.
Those 2 seasons in LA with people like Kim Manners and just the grind of 22 episodes, Fraturdays, what my mind has been open to, what my spirit has been open to, the people, the family, and Chris introduced me to my husband, Wade. Chris wanted Wade to train me in weapons tactics. 16 years later, and 2 kids. Thanks, Chris.
When I joined on, I knew I was getting involved with a show that had been a part of television history. I was a fan of the show, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to do it. And I've been doing it for 40 shows now. We're shooting the final episode right now.
Mitch comes out and he looks, sees that guard. Hold a couple of beats for me, Mitch.
For not having done television, to be involved with this, it let me be a leading man and let me be a hero instead of a bad guy, which was a great experience for me. One that I'm sorry is over.
We've all been fortunate enough to be a part of something that most people in our industry can only dream of being a part of. This is sort of a bittersweet afternoon because while on the one hand we're here celebrating 200 episodes, we're doing it as we're shooting the final episodes of this television series.
It's not just 200 episodes, it's over 2,000 shooting days, over 2,000 actors, 2,000 panic attacks. We recently celebrated Kim Manners' 50th episode. He directed his 50th episode of The X-Files.
I got to thank my wife, who's not here, but she's allowed me to give up 7.5 years of my life for this show. And there's only one way to cut this cake, and that is to stab at it. Thank you all very much.
I'd been directing 16 years before I got here, and I've got 5 years now on this show, so I think I've learned more as a director in the last 5 years than I had in my previous 16 years of my career, because this is an opportunity to grow with each show you do.
That was just excellent. Beyond my comprehension.
I set up a Steadicam shot around this.
I think when I got here, I was a very good director, and I think I'm a very, very good filmmaker now. There's a big difference. It's kind of neat to know that one day you're going to be dead and underground, and you left something behind that actually meant something to a medium. I think this show is one day going to be recognized as important as I Love Lucy or The Fugitive or Bonanza, you know, landmark shows. This is going to be one of those, and I was a part of that. That's cool.
That poster that we created on the wall for the pilot episode really sums up my personal belief, or lack thereof, is that I want something to believe in. I want to find the truth that is out there. I'm looking for something to be beyond the pale that becomes a reality. And it's where the episodes, I think, work best, in this kind of liminal area, what I call the realm of extreme possibility, that it actually owed more to Scully's science than it did to Mulder's science fiction.
I may not believe in God, Scully, but I believe in you. So this is not a good time for Scully to remind me that I'm afraid of fire?
Scully, even though she was the scientist, is a Catholic, and Mulder seems to be an atheist. This search for aliens is Mulder's secular faith, and the aliens are kind of his stand-in for God. And I think this idea that the truth is out there, that's an unattainable goal. The truth is the mystery of the universe.
God. What are you doing, actually?
The truth that Mulder and Scully found was this partnership. That's the truth we as human beings can find and know. They still don't have the answers. They still don't know what the aliens are up to or what the government's up to, but they know they have each other.
That's all Leila ever talks about. Mulder and Scully, Scully and Mulder, blah, blah, blah.
I created this character, Agent Leila Harris, named after a fan of the show who had died. And she really was, to me, a surrogate fan. You know, the X-Files had gone on long enough that we had legions of fans, and she stood in for every question any fan had had about the show. At the end, she survived this monster, and she's in her hospital room, and Mulder and Scully go to visit a fan, basically, is what it was.
When you went to Antarctica to save Agent Scully from being taken by that spaceship, and you ran out of gas in your snowcat, how did you get back?
For fans, I've heard a lot of people over the years say it saved their marriage, you know, it brought their family together, it got them through cancer in the hospital. And it went on for so long that not only David and I, but people in the world grew up with it in their living rooms. So there's a lot of nostalgia attached to it. However it is that we remember elements of our childhood, we metaphorically eat our Jell-O rather than just holding on to the memory of how something was. Or the idea of meeting one's heroes. It's kind of a similar thing. Sometimes it's better to just let them be your heroes, and however they manifest in terms of support or strength or ideation, whatever it is that you look up to that keeps you going and waking up in the day, that in and of itself is enough. I want to remember how it was. I want to remember how it